Welcome to Bring It Up with Deb and Cindy. This is a program where we bring up the conversation. Your host, Deborah Flora, speaker, writer, and movie producer, and Cindy Fay, author, Bible teacher, and international correspondent. And now, it's time to elevate the dialogue and bring it up.
Welcome to Bring It Up today. I'm Cindy Fay.
And I'm Deborah Flora.
Well, Rocklin Academy Elementary School in Northern California, Deb, you know, there has been a media firestorm after the kindergarten teacher had a transgender transitioning ceremony. Surprise, surprise, for one of the students during the class. And because the parents had no idea this was happening until their 5 or 6 year old child came home so confused and incredibly upset, this has kicked off a conversation about the greater issue of parental rights.
It is a very timely and important conversation to have.
It really is. So that's why we are so glad that today we have with us one of the moms whose daughter was in that class. She's one of several parents who have taken a stand for their right to teach their own children about important topics, especially those related to personal belief and morality, things like sexuality and gender identity. Unfortunately, these moms who dared to stand up for those parental rights have experienced quite a vicious personal backlash to the point where our guest today has asked us not to use her real name. That's another commentary on how...
That's another topic we're going to bring up later.
How did we get to that place in our country? But we're just going to call you Susan and welcome you to Bring It Up today.
Hi, thank you for having me.
We so appreciate your being here. You know, so obviously Cindy shared a little bit about what happened. Can you tell us a little bit more about what exactly happened in this kindergarten class, your daughter's kindergarten class?
Yeah, sure. So I picked up my daughter on the last day of school, and I noticed that the child was wearing a dress. And my daughter ran up to me and said, he's not a boy anymore, Mommy. He's a girl. He has a girl brain and a boy body, and this is his new name. And I thought, what? Oh, okay. And I just thought, no, he just wanted to wear a dress today. And she said, no, Mommy, he is a girl now. And so I went up to question the teacher, and I just said, hey, what's going on with this little boy? And she said, oh, you have to talk to your daughter about it. And I thought, okay, why do I have to talk to my daughter about it?
Right.
So we went home that night, and we spoke about it with our family, and we prayed for this little boy. And the next morning I helped in class for the graduation, because it was kindergarten graduation, and every child in that class ran up to me and told me the same thing. He's not a boy anymore. He's a girl. He has a girl brain and a boy body, and this is his new name. And I thought, what in the world did these kids learn?
Mm-hmm.
So all of the parents went to the graduation. This child was in the front row in a dress. They announced him with his new girl name. The parents were shocked. We had no idea what was happening. Later that day, I found out from another mom about a book that had been read. So we researched online about transgender books for kindergartners. My daughter picked out the book that was read. It was a book called I Am Jazz. She told us about the book. She had remembered almost the entire thing. And in that book, it talks about how this little boy thinks that he's a girl, and so his parents take him to the doctor. And the doctor says, you're right, you're really not a boy, you're a girl. You have a girl brain and a boy body. This is called transgender, and it makes you special.
And this book, I Am Jazz, is actually written particularly for kindergartners and is starting to be introduced in kindergartens around the country.
Yes, correct.
Yes.
So I emailed the teacher directly. I got no response. The principal actually emailed me back. We told them that they had to notify the parents about that this had been happening in class, since no one had been notified about it. A couple of days later, my daughter was taking a bath, and she saw herself in a reflection in the metal in the bathtub, and she started crying and shaking. And she was like, Mommy, I turned into a boy. I'm so afraid. Mommy, I don't want to be a boy. And I thought, oh, my goodness, what was she exposed to in this classroom?
Mm-hmm. And just one thing to say there, you know, these are kindergarten students. And I, as a parent, what I think is at the heart of this is you all weren't told. I mean, we all know we get notes sent home if there is an eclipse, even if there's going to be peanuts served in a class. But you guys were not told ahead of time.
No.
So then what happened with your daughter?
So she was terrified, and this led us to meet with the principal and the superintendent. We still were not told anything. We found out from another little girl in the class that the child had actually changed his clothes. So they had read the book, and he had gone into the bathroom, changed into a dress, come out in a dress, and then told everyone that he was now a girl and that this was his new girl name. The school denied that, but we had to interview all of our children to find out what happened. A third of the class said the exact same story. He came dressed as a boy, and then he changed into a dress. So I really had to minister to my own daughter because she was terrified because she had seen her little friend, who she had known for 2 years, change into an opposite sex right in front of her.
Yes.
And she thought in her 5-year-old brain that that could happen to her. And a lot of other children in this class had the same fears. They came home crying, scared that their blood could turn into boy blood, scared that God would be mad at them if maybe they thought that they wanted to turn into the opposite sex. I even had a girlfriend who had to have an entire talk about sex and body parts with her 5-year-old son because he was questioning how this child had changed in front of him. And so these were topics that we were not prepared to talk to our 5-year-olds about. The school would not let us talk to the teacher, so we still to this day really don't know what happened in that class.
You know, and what strikes me so much about this is that you all had to play detectives and keep questioning your own children, and the onus was on you. The other thing that that you shared previously is that the California Code says that these topics are only going to be taught when children are emotionally ready. From the responses that you shared, it confirms they're not emotionally ready, but every parent actually knows that. Kindergartners are too young to even talk about sex education, let alone the way this was presented.
That's right.
So what did the school say was the reason that they couldn't tell you what had happened in a classroom where your own child was?
So they hid behind something that they call privacy rights, which as a parent who is not political and I didn't know the law at the time, I just thought, okay, privacy rights. We actually contacted an attorney at the Pacific Justice Institute, and through conversations I learned that indeed there is no such thing as a privacy right that keeps them from telling me what happened to my own child in the classroom. Once this child decided to make it public that he was choosing a transgender lifestyle, he was no longer given that privacy right anymore, and so it happened in a public setting, in a public school. So there is really nothing in the California law that states that they cannot tell me what happened to my daughter or what happened in that class, but they are hiding behind supposed privacy laws.
Well, you're listening to Bring It Up with Deb and Cindy, and we were talking about the Rocklin school situation where a transitioning ceremony happened in a kindergarten unbeknownst to the parents. And we have one of the moms with us, and I really appreciate your bringing this up. I think the key is, as you said, you didn't know your rights ahead of time or know that you even needed to know your rights ahead of time. And so really the hope is for every parent listening, whether you're in California or Colorado or wherever you are around the country, that we know what the rights are for our children. We know it intrinsically, but the law backs that up.
Right.
Yes. Well, so, you know, what happened after that? What did you parents do as you're seeing this response to your children and the school that is stonewalling you? What was your next step?
So we actually started a petition, and we actually got 1,300 signatures on that petition just from parents at the school and members of the community. We also started going to every board meeting and demanding that this be a topic that's on the board meeting agenda so that they could discuss it. After all of that, they still waited until August to even notify the school, other families at the school, that this had happened. And when they did, they made it sound like it was no big deal and everything that happened was legal. They then put out a public statement that they did not have to notify anyone and they did not have to offer opt-out, and they actually said it would be against the law for them to do this, which is also not true.
Mm-hmm.
So they also hired a PR firm to battle against the parents. because it now became a national story, and we were being asked every day if we wanted to go on the news or if we would do an interview, and we were like, oh my goodness, we are just stay-at-home moms. We don't even know what's going on.
But I want to say, by the way, thank you so much. You were thrust into this situation.
Yes.
You were just trying to raise your children, but because you all did, you've been on the news, once again having to hide your identity. This has brought it to the attention of others who don't even know that they need to know about this. So thank you for doing that courageously. What was your specific request of the school board? Because you shared it. It's very reasonable.
Yeah, so in June, a handful of us parents went to the principal and went to the superintendent, and all we said was, will you please notify us if this book has to be read again, and will you please give us the ability to keep our children out of that class if you feel the need to read this book. That was really our only request. They publicly said that we had asked for a book ban, which was not true. We had just asked, because of the trauma that our children had been exposed to, that the school would then tell us that they would not allow them to be exposed to that book again. Mm-hmm. They told us they could not promise us that, and they basically told us that they would teach this whenever they chose, and that it was against the law for them to not read the book.
Well, and one thing that I appreciate, and you've had this backlash, but you shared an interesting story where a mom who was on the other side, finally got clearly what this was about. It's not about transgenderism per se. It's about the right to know what your children are being taught. What was the example you used that helped her understand?
Well, the policy that the school has now adopted basically allows for any child at any time to bring in whatever book they choose that explains either their gender identity or their religious views or anything of that nature. And one of the moms was saying, well, so now this allows my daughter to bring in the Book of Mormon and to read aloud the Book of Mormon to her classmates and to talk to them about that religion, because this is her personal view, and your policy is saying that you cannot judge her for that view, and she has to be able to share it. And this mom said, oh my goodness, for the first time I realized, these other issues are not controversial to me. Gender identity or gay and lesbian issues or things like that are not controversial. But if you would teach my daughter about religion or about Christianity or Mormonism or anything like that in public school, that would be controversial to me. Mm-hmm. And I would not want her exposed to that from an authority figure like her teacher. And what we want...
Good. And that's a great clarification. I think everybody needs to know that that's what this is really about. It is the right of the parents to teach things of meaning. Since this has happened, you've shared that 48 families have left, which means 90 students after they were stonewalled by the board, which is one of the options we have as parents to do. And you were one of those families. How is your daughter doing now?
Oh, she's doing wonderful.
Good.
It's turned out to be a real blessing, and we're in a great school that interprets the law in a different way, which is really key. These laws were created to have kind of gray areas so that schools could interpret them in an appropriate way for their demographic.
Yes.
And so some schools are choosing to interpret them on the side of parental rights and to give you the right as a parent to teach these things to your children at home instead of them being exposed to them by their teachers. And other schools are choosing that their teachers should be able to speak to their students about any topic that they see fit. Great.
Well, the last question here, because, you've said that you were never an activist before, and many Christians, it's hard for them to stand up because we don't want to make waves. But the reality is, I Am Jazz, this book that doesn't teach about not bullying people, it teaches about having a different gender brain in your body, introducing confusion. That's happening all over the country now. What would you say to parents like yourself who maybe are hesitant to get involved? What would you say is our role as Christians today and as parents?
Well, when this first happened, I prayed and I asked the Lord, what do you want me to do? And he said, I want you to fiercely protect your daughter, and I want you to stand up in truth and love. And I said, okay. And to me, that looks like loving and honoring every party, not judging, not fighting against with anger, but we are called to love and to stand firm in that love. And I would just encourage moms that these are your precious gifts from the Lord. These are your children. And, you need to stand up for them because they don't have a voice. And I was able to have a voice for my daughter. Mm-hmm. I was able to just to encourage other parents to stand up and to fight, because what we're fighting for really should be what every parent is fighting for, regardless of your political view. We're fighting for our children. We're fighting for our right to be able to mold them in the morality that we want to mold them in at home. And so, I mean, we didn't even have TV. I don't watch the news. This is all brand new to me, and I was just doing what the Lord wanted me to do, because if we don't stand up and we don't stand for truth and we don't stand for love, this kind of topic is just going to steamroll through our schools, and our children are going to be exposed to a lot of things that we necessarily don't want them to be exposed to at that age. So I would just encourage them to just stand up and be firm in love.
I love that. Well, thank you so much for being so courageous, for fiercely loving and protecting, and showing us that we can do the same thing, giving us that kind of impetus. The good news is that there are tools to help us. So on our website at bringitupmedia.com, we will have a link to a great Focus on the Family article called Talking to Your Children About Transgenderism. And also, as we continue today, do you know what your parental rights are? Our next guest will spell them out and share with us how we can protect those rights and our kids at the same time. Stay tuned.
What do you think are the most expensive windows that you can get in your house? It's the ones you already have.
That's right. Your old windows that let in drafts and dust and let out the heat and air conditioning you're paying for.
American Vision Windows has served over 80,000 customers and have installed close to 1 million windows. And they've learned from firsthand experience that small improvements like installing new windows give you big impact.
Which means a more comfortable home for you and your family, all while saving money on your energy bills.
American Vision Windows will pay the tax on your new windows, plus install them for free. So now is the time to beautify, protect, and increase the value of your home.
Revolutionizing the home improvement industry one customer at a time. American Vision Windows.
Call 888-228-0722. 888-228-0722 or click AmericanVisionWindows.com.
American Vision Windows.
CSOB number 778326. Tax based on materials. Some restrictions apply. Call for details. Offer expires 10/31/17.
Welcome back to Bring It Up. I'm Deborah Flora.
And I'm Cindy Fay.
Well, we are continuing our conversation about parental rights. This issue has certainly taken center stage after Rocklin Academy Elementary School kindergarten teacher had a transgender transitioning ceremony for one of the students. In the last segment, if you missed it, definitely go to our website, bringitupmedia.com. You're going to want to hear this amazing interview. Our guest was one of the inspiring and courageous moms who stood up to this school. She shared that the parents had no idea that this was happening until their 5- and 6-year-old students came home confused and upset. Well, it certainly stirred up a lot of questions. Whose job is it to teach our children about any controversial issue of belief, sexuality, gender identity, and most importantly, how do we protect our right to guide our children according to our own values? Here to help us answer those questions is Greg Burt. Greg is with the California Family Council, which works to inform and equip people to engage their government and to stand up for their rights. Welcome, Greg.
Thank you so much for having me.
Greg, we really appreciate you being with us today. And this just is, my blood is boiling actually, because kindergarten is such a young age to be talking about these types of topics. And many of these kids were just traumatized by it. So how do schools justify teaching transgenderism and promoting it, frankly, to 5-year-olds?
There's an issue with bullying in schools, and so a lot of these kids who are struggling with their identity are teased, and so they think the way to stop bullying is we have to change the way our kids think about gender. And instead of simply teaching kids how to get along with people who are different or who disagree with us, we are now saying that everybody's got to agree on how we know if we're boys or girls, and that's the only way that we're going to stop bullying. And that's just violating religious liberty. People's, a lot of young Christians are sending their kids to school, and, they're secure in their identity, knowing that God created them both either male or female. And so to be told that you could be trapped in the wrong body, and that is based on your feelings is just really confusing for young kids. It's confusing for anybody.
It is confusing. Well, we were really shocked to learn in our previous segment that the parents were not even notified ahead of time. And then when they confronted the school officials, they were told that they couldn't share what happened in the classroom because of, quote, privacy issues. Is that true or even legal?
The way California is dealing with young kids who are identifying as the opposite sex is more or less they're not even obligated. The school is obligated to tell the parents that their child is struggling. So if a child goes to school and starts referring to himself as the opposite sex, they have to get the child's permission to tell the parents, their own parents. They do the same thing if you're dealing with a child who gets pregnant out of when they're young and they don't notify parents, and that they can actually go get them an abortion without notifying parents. They're treating it the same way, that this is a privacy issue for the student, and so they're not obligated to tell your own parents, especially any other parents.
Is that law, Greg?
Well, they're confusing that law because once a child announces to the class that he is transgender, there's no longer privacy. So parents have the right to know what goes on in the classroom, and so they're distorting privacy. Like if the school found out that a kid was transgendered and he wanted to keep it a secret, well, they have a legal obligation to keep that private. But once the class is told that this kid is transitioning, tells everybody, and the kid is announcing it publicly, well, there's no privacy is gone.
The privacy is out the window. That their privacy has just gone out the window at that point. So, Greg, what does the law say then about the parental rights in these instances? That clearly the book I Am Jazz was read. It was planned to be read. The parents were not notified ahead of time. So, is there a law that there are parental rights about what is going to be presented, and should we know ahead of time? And do school districts have any autonomy over what is taught and presented?
Local school districts in California have a lot of rights to determine what curriculum is taught in the classroom. And definitely parents have the right to know what goes on inside a classroom, especially if their children are being taught any lesson or there's anybody coming in to teach them any lessons. Parents have a right to know that. So that the privacy laws are being skewed to supposedly protect the transgendered kid in the class, but it's a ridiculous claim that parents don't have a right to know what type of lessons are being taught in the classroom on these particular issues. So parents need to stand up and push back against these school districts.
Well, we have Greg Burt with us. He's with the California Family Council. This is Bring It Up with Deb and Cindy. We're talking about parental rights in view of the Rocklin Academy transitioning ceremony that recently occurred in a kindergarten classroom of all places. In the wake of this, Greg, your organization has put together a parental rights policy. Tell us what this policy is and how can we as parents use it effectively for such a time as this?
Yeah, the policy was actually put together by a legal organization called Alliance Defending Freedom. This is one of the largest Christian religious liberty organizations in the country. And it has two provisions. One, it simply asks the school that if issues of gender identity are going to be presented to your children, that parents are going to be notified ahead of time. They can actually see the curriculum and opt their kids out if they don't agree with it. It's treated just like California does sex education. But here in California, gender identity teaching is not considered sex education, so the same opt-out provisions aren't provided. But local school districts can provide these type of opt-out provisions for parents, especially in districts where you have a lot of conservative parents. The other part of the proposal was that if any child is identifying as the opposite sex in a particular school, that the school district let other parents know that that particular child is going to be using the opposite sex bathrooms, the locker room, showers, because every student has the right to privacy. California Constitution guarantees the right to bodily privacy. So no little girl should be undressing in front of a biological boy.
Mm-hmm.
And parents have the right to be notified. And so this provision just says, schools, you need to let parents know that this could happen, and if it might, then you have to provide privacy for my child.
Yes. Yeah, but we're going to have a link on our website to this parental rights policy. So if you're listening and you want to make that available in your own school district, we'll have that for you. Greg, the truth is we know that these kinds of things are happening all over the country, not just California, and we do have listeners across the U.S. What can parents do outside of California? I mean, that's available for them as well, but what else can we do?
The biggest thing is that people and parents need to realize that they are in charge of their children and that they have the fundamental right to direct the upbringing and education of their kids. And so they need to talk to their school districts about how their class is going to deal with transgenderism. If it comes up, if these books are introduced, how will those books be treated?
Mm-hmm.
And you have to be proactive. And you cannot be afraid. There's so much fear around bringing up these issues because the other side will call you a bully or a bigot, and that is just not true. We need to teach our kids to be loving and compassionate towards those struggling with their gender identity, but that does not require that you agree with them about how gender is actually formed or how do we determine it.
Mm-hmm.
So parents need to find boldness and being willing to stand up to their teachers and their school districts.
Yeah, and we need to realize that difference of opinion or belief is not hate speech.
That's right.
It's just a different opinion. There's so many social issues that are hitting us right now, and it's, as you said, it's easy for Christians to disengage and withdraw. As believers, then, how do we stay strong in this fight?
Well, we go back to what it was like when the first disciples, after Jesus was rose from the dead, and he sent them out into the world, and just realized how isolated and alone they were. But their courage and their trust in God encouraged them to speak out publicly and to not be afraid. How many times in the Bible it says, do not be afraid?
It says that more than any other thing, actually.
Do not be afraid.
Yeah.
So Jesus is telling us the same thing.
Yeah.
Do not be afraid. I have overcome the world.
I
right?
love that. I love that. Greg, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Greg. And the great thing about that example is they changed the world.
Yes, they did.
Through their courage.
Mm-hmm.
God used them to change the world. Well, thank you, Greg, for the great work that you are doing, helping parents stand up for their rights. It's wonderful to know that we don't have to do it alone. On our website, bringitupmedia.com, as Cindy mentioned, we have a link to California Family Council and Parental Rights Policy they have crafted so you can present it to your own school. This is a great place to start no matter what state you are in. That will be at bringitupmedia.com. Well, as we continue, whether you know it or not, you've got your very own brand that identifies you. Up next, do you know what your brand is and what it might say about you? Don't go anywhere.
Let's take a moment to talk about how we're able to be with you every Sunday afternoon.
Well, that sounds great. Well, we've got a studio, a microphone, and a radio station, a great one. What more could we need?
Well, how about partners?
Oh, yep, Cindy, that's right, partners.
You see, we're a nonprofit ministry committed to helping you, our listeners, navigate biblically in this crazy culture with clarity, purpose, and joy. And it's your prayer and financial support that makes this program possible.
That's right. And you can join us as a partner by praying for us and donating on our website, bringitupmedia.com.
That's bringitupmedia.com. Just click the donate button.
You can put it on your credit card, maybe as an ongoing monthly amount. And your donation is tax deductible because we're a nonprofit.
So your support keeps us on the air, bringing up the issues that are important to you.
So come join us as a partner by logging on to bringitupmedia.com and clicking on the donate button because we are in this together.
And thanks.
Welcome back to Bring It Up. I'm Deborah Flora.
And I'm Cindy Faye.
Well, Cindy, everywhere we turn, we see brands. Let's face it. They're on street signs, bus stops, clothing, on any screen that we pick up. We are a very branded culture.
What is your brand? I mean, that's the watchword.
Indeed. And usually the brand makes us immediately think of something if they're good. For instance, I'm going to name a brand. You tell me what you think of when I say it.
Okay.
Okay. The Nike swoosh. I love that word, swoosh.
Oh, I think of Olympic athletes.
There you go. Excellent. How about the Huggies diaper bear?
Oh, gosh. Do you really want me to say what I think of? I think of just cleaning one of my brand new twin grandsons' poopy pants. No, I think of the bear makes me, they're so soft and cuddly and comfortable.
You go. You think comfort for your little grandson.
Or you can wrap his tuchus in something comfortable.
How about Starbucks? You see the Starbucks logo.
Oh, I get to have my drink any way I want it. They write my name on it and call my name Cindy.
See?
Your beverage is ready.
There you go. Don't you feel special, Cindy?
I feel like such an individual.
Well, and you are.
Extra hot latte, please.
Oh, but see, there you go. So each one of those brands makes you think of something very specific and fortunately positive.
Yeah, well, yes.
But, here's the question that we should ask ourselves. Do we realize that each of us has our own brand as well? Whether we've intended to, by the way, or not. So are you seen as the soccer mom? That's kind of a brand. It carries yourself a certain way. Are you the helicopter parent? Are you the career woman? Or are you the church lady?
Oh, boy. That conjures up something incredibly negative, doesn't it?
I'm having fun with that one. More likely you're the faithful Bible teacher, church volunteer.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, our personal brand impacts us in every area of our lives, whether we have intentionally created it or not. It is often the first quick snapshot through which people immediately size us up. Here to help us identify and perhaps adjust our brand, both for personal and career reasons, is Brenda Bertrand. Brenda is a career clarity coach for Christian women, a graduate of Princeton Theological Seminary, and she's also a university chaplain and consultant at leading global firms. Welcome, Brenda.
Thanks. It's always good to be here.
Oh, well,
we're going to have fun with this.
We're going to have some fun with our brand. Okay. Yes. And Brenda, let's just launch out. What exactly is branding when it comes to people? When it comes to us as individuals?
It is as simple as this. What are you known for? When you walk into a room, how do people perceive you? What are you known for? How is that room different when you leave? Your brand is really your reputation. And so the Bible talks about reputation all throughout, especially in the Old Testament. But your brand is literally what you are known for.
Now, what if you come into a room of people as a stranger and they don't know you?
Oh, my goodness. We are either, our brand is either perceived or it is conceived. People are either perceiving who we are and making up their own story for us, or we are deciding. So if you walk into a room and you've never been there before, your brand, if you come in with a knowing and awareness, right, and attention to being your best self, then you may say, you know what, I'm an extrovert. I'm a person that connects with people. I'm a listener. I want to hear other people's stories more than telling my own. Then there are other people who have a different brand. They're the here I am person. They walk into a room, whether you know them or not, they attract attention. They want attention. And that becomes who they are. So in a room where you don't know people, there are two usual immediate brands. There you are and here I am. So there are people who walk in with there you are. I want to know who you are. I want to know your story. And there are a lot of people who are here I am. I want to tell my story. I want to be known. So
it seems like it's those who are self-focused or others-focused.
Right. And self-awareness is going to help differentiate those who know what to do in a certain space. Because there are times when you need to be one or the other.
You're branding yourself right away.
Who you are and what are you known for.
And we're branding ourselves even if we don't realize it. Which is
and that is the part. We're going to talk about perception.
Unintentionally branding
branding by default, yes.
We'll have a sidebar conversation later, Brenda, you can talk to me personally. Well, here's a question, because I was in Hollywood a lot where this was very much you are marketing yourself all the time. And
I am.
Yes, unfortunately. And as a Christian, sometimes this can rub us the wrong way. We can misunderstand what this means. Why do Christians need to be aware of their branding and how they're presenting themselves? I mean, you can always ask the question, isn't God the one who promotes you? So why does it really matter?
Right. And it matters because Jesus models. Jesus was a brand. Jesus is a brand.
He's the awesome brand.
He's the ultimate brand. And he came with a very clear an acknowledgement of who he was and what he was born to do. I've come to bring life and more abundantly. John the Baptist was this, I am that. That he had a very significant brand. And when he left, he told us, you've got a mission, you've got things to do.
You're the light of the world.
Yeah, you got to be salt and light. So now we have these brands that have been given to us, but then we also have gifts. We have been gifted by God. And so as Christians, whatever domain we are in, we have the opportunity to reflect who God has uniquely made us to be, which is your brand, right? If we're going to use that term. And so for Christians, it's important. One, because we're expanding the kingdom of God and reflecting it. Two, because we have gifts that God has given us that we are to give generously in service to our world and our community and our families. And three, at the end of the day, people have a lot of impressions about Christians that are not healthy and they're not good. So there is a branding problem that Christianity has. And we are responsible to really take ownership and engage what we're putting out in the world. And if we're not doing it, then who is? So
yeah, they should know us by our love, right?
They should know us by our love.
That's what Jesus asked us to do. Well, why is being intentional then about our brand so important to women in the workplace, even those who maybe aren't career driven but are looking to find a job that to help support their families?
Yeah, so it's important because, first of all, branding informs our personal and professional relationships. So if you are known as the gal who comes into work and her Bible's on her desk, but she doesn't talk to anyone unless they say a bad word, and then she like pipes up and she's like, wah, 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 then your brand is, that's the person who is the judger or the person.
The church lady.
The church lady. We're back to the church lady. I knew she would show up again.
Satan. Oh, you're channeling Saturday Night Live.
And so your brand not only opens doors for relationships, but it opens professional doors as well. When someone's sitting in a room to many of the meetings that women are not invited to, because we don't have the old girls club, there is the old boys club, but there's some meetings that we are not invited to where people are looking for a particular fit. And someone around that table may say, you know what, Cindy, she's that one that does really good writing. And whenever you give her a project, it's done on time. It's done well. You never have to fact check it. It's like she is known for being on top of things. We should look for her to be a part of this conversation. So what you're known for is it opens doors for you, and sometimes even behind closed doors, you are being spoken of based on the brand that you present. So it's super important.
That's really good.
Well, you're listening to Bring It Out with Deb and Cindy, and we have Brenda Bertrand with us. She's a career clarity coach. She's also a chaplain, so a fabulous combination to talk about branding. We're talking about it personally. How do we come across personally as we walk into a room and in our relationships, and also how it affects us in our work relationships. You know, I love, Brenda, that you're talking about this branding. It's being known more for what you do, not just what you say, which is great. You know, also, by the way, branding, we've talked about what you wear in the workplace is a huge part of it.
Part of your brand.
You know, do you want to be known as the woman with the see-through peekaboo blouse who is not taken seriously?
Or frumpy dumpy. I mean,
right. Yes, the Ugg boot mentality, we call it. You know,
the girl who wears the jeans that, you know, where the plumber's problem at the back.
Yeah, that's risky. So,
you're probably not going to be taken real seriously in the meetings.
So here's a question. You know, that is obviously external. We can start right away with how we look externally, but how do we identify, now that we're becoming aware that we have a brand, whether we realize it or not, how do we identify our current brand? What do we look at?
So here's the thing. Many of us, we are not aware of our own brand, which I really hope in my own work to be able to annihilate that lack of awareness. But sometimes we literally have to ask someone, what is my brand? What am I known for at work? What am I known for at the PTA? How do people perceive me? Sometimes we actually need to do that homework. And you want to ask the friend who'll be honest, the friend that's not a yes person, the friend that loves you to death, even to the point of honesty, that is able to share your strengths as well as your weaknesses. So if you're having a hard time really honing and you're hearing this brand conversation, you're like, I can't really explain or express what my brand is, then get someone who can truly and honestly tell you. And usually your spouse, they're really good at it. Your employer, what am I known for in this company? I just want to have a 5-minute conversation with you, employer or boss or whoever, supervisor. What am I known for in this company, and where are some opportunities for growth? The other thing I always ask clients is, this is a very hard question, but how is your workplace different because you are there? And some people say, you know what? I'm the person who's the collaborator. I'm the team player. So your brand is known as the connector, the collaborator. So how is your personal work or volunteer or church is different because you were there.
Are you adding value?
What value do you add? You
Yes.
know, how is this place different? And you'll find that your brand is locked into some of the language that comes out of that story. Like when you start to tell yourself back, this place is different because I'm here.
It's really, you have to be so transparent and be able to hear that truth.
Yeah.
It takes a lot of courage to ask that question.
It takes a lot of work, and that's why a lot of people have a brand by default versus by design. Now, those who have a brand by design, they excel in so many places. Lots of doors open for them, lots of favor, which comes from God. But people look at you as well, and they make an assessment, and they open doors based on their perception of you. So, yes, self-awareness is number one. Other awareness, asking other people to speak into that. And then thirdly, just asking yourself that really difficult question. How is this place, wherever that is, different because I am here? What skills and actions and heart and character do I bring? What value do I add?
That's so good.
That is
That
uniquely
is.
me. That's uniquely me.
Now, what if we realize that our brand isn't exactly all it can be, or how we wish it is, or how we're being perceived? How do we change that?
I know, that's really hard. So number one, we're back to awareness, is I'm admitting and accepting that there's some room for growth. I can grow as a listener. For example, I have a client who, she's a talker, and she knows she's a talker, and she's used that kind of like, oh yeah, you know, I'm extrovert, I'm a talker, and it's kind of like a badge that she wears with pride. But the experience of her as a talker is no one else gets room to speak. So her brand is, if you're in a meeting, they know that if she's there, she's going to take up a lot of the space.
All the air is going to be sucked out.
All the air is going to be sucked out of the room. And she's a brilliant woman, but acknowledging that that's true, and then setting one minimal goal. And I usually tell people, use this goal for like at least 2 weeks to say, I will not speak, in her case, for example, in a meeting until 3 people have spoken. And you make a practical, actionable, clear goal, and you work that goal. And you know why? Brands are only believable when they're consistent.
Yes.
We believe McDonald's. We believe Starbucks. There's some companies we're like, I'm not sure what you are. We believe Chick-fil-A.
Yeah.
There's some companies that are in flux. They're trying to be someone else.
Because our product, what we get, is always going to be consistent.
And
Yes.
branding is all about authenticity and consistency. So find a goal, make it, keep it, and be held accountable to it over time. You'll learn to trust yourself, and others will learn to trust you.
So good.
You know, and this is such a great spiritual exercise, even if you're not in the workforce. So this is really what we should be doing all the time in prayer with God and the Holy Spirit, and asking, how can I improve? How can I change? And accountability. You know, women have a different situation oftentimes. And how does comparison, especially for women, affect their brand? And by the way, I'm saying this knowing that I competed at Miss America, where it was nothing but comparison.
Yes.
So I know that can affect women in particular. We just have a couple minutes left, but real quickly, how does it affect women?
So it affects us in the most negative ways. We know that comparison actually puts us in a place of performance and exhaustion, trying to be something we're not. Branding is being authentic to who you are. So once you put someone in front of you that you say, okay, you know what? She's more gorgeous than I am. She's smarter than I am. She's a better speaker than I am. Instead of saying she's better than I am, the question is, how can I improve to serve where God has called me to serve? Maybe God hasn't called you to be a speaker. So why spend energy trying to be something that you're not called to be? So comparison always hurts. Perfectionism hurts. What we need to do is focus on, what has God called me to do and to be in this environment? What value have I been meant to add in the place that I've been called? And to focus our attention on what we can change and what God is changing in us, versus trying to be formed in the image of someone else. This is a Christian principle.
Oh, that's a great way to put it.
This is a Christian principle. Am I being formed in the image of Christ and who Christ has called me to be? Or am I being formed in the image of someone else, or what the culture has called me to be?
That's powerful. Well, and this kind of answers the question I was just going to ask you. How does our faith fit into the idea of our career branding? It's all about who God is creating you to be, right?
Absolutely. And, you know, Proverbs 21 says a good name is more admirable than riches, and to be esteemed is more valuable than gold. And so this is a principle of God saying, go out in the world, represent me, and represent who I've created you to be. You do that, then you hear, good and faithful servant.
Well done.
And that's well done. Well done. And it's action oriented.
And that's the brand we all want.
I know.
Well done, servant.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, and I love, Brenda, too, that we know if we've gotten off track, that we can then become known as the person that's willing to change.
Yes.
That's an important part of our brand, too. There's no reason we have to be stuck. Well, thank you so much. We love the idea of being intentional and so appreciate the practical tips so that we can proactively craft our brand by design, not by default. I love that. Instead of letting the world label us instead.
That's so great. Well, on our website at bringitupmedia.com, we will have a link to Brenda's website so you can find more great tips that will help you to flourish professionally and personally. You'll find all that at bringitupmedia.com.
Well, as we look at the world around us, coming up next, we have the 3 things you can't live without. Don't go anywhere.
Welcome back to Bring It Up. I'm Cindy Faye.
And I'm Deborah Flora.
Well, Deb, I don't know, just about everywhere we go, people are talking about the intensity of our world right now.
Oh, yes, they are.
It's crazy times. So much conflict, violence, Las Vegas, hurricanes. We're fearing for our kids' future, for our families, for our finances, our safety. The list goes on and on. There's so much we could potentially worry about.
Oh, absolutely. I was even reading online that several publications have called this the year of fear. It's catchy, but I want to change it. I don't want it to be that anymore.
Well, I want to bring up some good news.
Please do.
2 Timothy 1:7. For God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power, love, and a sound mind. By the way, Paul wrote that while he was in prison under Nero. He was, if he could not be fearing in that moment, and if he could have power, love, and a sound mind, I think we can learn from him. But I think it's important for us to unpack that.
Oh, absolutely.
Power, love, and a sound mind. We don't have to have a spirit of fear. What does that mean to you, do you think?
Well, I love the fact that happened, like you said, when Paul was in his situation. When I look at the time we're in, I went from a place of being fearful myself for the first time. I'm not a fearful person.
Yeah.
But then God suddenly began to show me, wait a second, do you think it's by mistake that you're here at this time? This is all part of his plan. We are born for such a time as this. And the exciting thing is, it's in times like this that the greatest heroic stories of the Bible are told.
Well, and the greatest heroic stories of our time are told. I think about our first guest that we had on, the Rocklin mom. But I think about the Apostle Paul, and he talked about his own weakness, and he said that's when God's power shows up. When we feel weak, when we feel afraid, all we have to go to him to do is go to him and say, you know what, Lord, I need your strength.
Yes.
His power is made perfect in our weakness. And that's why the Apostle Paul said, I delight in weakness that the power of God may rest on me.
And when we think of power, so many people do feel powerless today. The reality is all we have to do is stand up, speak the truth in love, and the results are completely in God's hands.
Yes.
That's all we have to do.
Well, and then I think about love, and I think about how God told us that nothing in all the world and all creation can separate us from his love. We don't have to have a spirit of fear, but power, love, and a sound mind. God is with us in all of these things. The Bible also tells us we're more than conquerors through him who loved us.
Absolutely. And I love that it completes with sound mind.
Yes.
Because this is not sticking our head in our joy bubble and praying nothing will happen. That's actually a form of denial.
Yeah.
A sound mind means because we know God loves us, we can look clearly at what is going on, but knowing who goes ahead of us into this, who is beside us, who is behind us. And a sound mind means that we allow him to change our thoughts to see what he has created us to do in this time given us.
And it's choosing to focus our mind on what is true in the middle of these crazy times. God is with us. We may not be in control, but we can trust the one who is. He is with us. So do not fear, but have a mind that is filled with power, love, and soundness. And that's our prayer for you this week.
It is indeed. Have a great week.